Ryu was a regular teenager who got hit by a truck and was reincarnated into a world full of magic. He got the ability to use water magic and only wanted to live a peaceful life by himself, but he soon becomes the strongest mage in the entire world without even realizing it. Ryu, a 15-year-old boy, suddenly finds himself in a strange white place, and as he wonders what is going on, a tall blonde guy arrives there, telling him that he is dead. Ryu suddenly remembers getting jumped by Truck-kun and asks the blonde dude if he is God. He replies that he is more like an angel who is here to send him to another world. Ryu can't believe that he gets to be Ice Guide, and the angel tells him that he can live as he wants in his next life. Well, Ryu is a chill guy and he just wants to live a slow and peaceful life. The angel has no problem with his choice, and he tells Ryu that the world he will be sent to has magic, and around 20% humans can cast spells. Ryu has talent for water magic, and the angel tells him that he will be dropped at a safe house in the middle of a forest because he opted to live a slow life. There will be enough food to last him for 2 months, and there will be an invisible barrier that will prevent monsters from approaching him. Soon, Ryu wakes up in a house in the middle of the forest, and he immediately heads outside to test out his newfound magic abilities. He then checks out his house that has some frozen meat in a cold room and also an empty bath. There is a knife and 2 beginner-level books on the table that tell him about the monsters and the plants in the area. After that, he heads outside again and experiments with magic, discovering that he can create water just by imagining it, and there is no need to chant any spells. He wants to take a hot bath, but can only create room temperature water, so he decides to start a fire instead. He goes full caveman mode and tries creating fire by rubbing sticks together, but he doesn't have the required skill or strength for that. He gives up, but then he gets an idea to use the sunlight to create fire instead. For that, he decides to create a lens using ice, imagining individual water molecules bonding together as heat is stolen from them, and ultimately succeeds in freezing the water. He then carves the ice into a sphere and uses it as a lens to start a fire. Thanks to that, he can enjoy a hot bath at night, and he realizes that he can create hot water directly if he just applies the principles of modern science to magic. The next day, as he has some dried meat for breakfast, Ryu thinks that he must increase his offensive power because he will need to hunt monsters once he runs out of stored food. He starts by practicing to shoot a water ball at a tree, and even though he can hit his target in the first attempt, it doesn't do any damage. He is not discouraged by that and decides to shoot out a high-pressure water jet because that will have enough power. However, he can't put enough force in the water jet to reach the tree, and it just seems like he is peeing from his hand. Ryu feels like giving up. But then he remembers that the angel told him that the key to using magic is his imagination, and he can get better at it only with regular practice. So Ryu keeps practicing shooting a water jet till he can consistently hit the tree, and at night, he is able to generate hot water directly. The next day, he tries creating ice crystals out of thin air because he has always dreamt of using the Icicle Lance magic spell. However, shooting an icicle is even harder than shooting water, but Ryu keeps practicing it along with his other water magic variations. Days pass, and he becomes more skilled at using water and ice, and one day, he decides to head into the forest to hunt for some food. He explores the beautiful forest and decides to gather some herbs and call it a day, but just then, he notices an angry boar staring at him. Ryu freezes in terror as the boar charges at him, and he barely gets out of its way at the last moment. The boar simply knocks down a tree and Ryu gathers the courage to fight back. He covers the ground in front of the boar with a sheet of ice, making it slip. As the boar slides towards him really fast, Ryu creates multiple sharp icicles pointing towards it at the end of the runway. The boar hits the icicles at full speed and immediately dies after being turned into Swiss cheese. Ryu can't believe that he won, and at night, he checks his book on monsters to find that boars are the weakest kind of monsters. He then notices that even though the book talks about beginner-level monsters, there are 2 special entries at the end. The first one is about dragons, who are powerful enough to burn down entire cities easily, and if one spots them, he should immediately run away. The second page is about demons, who are beings of unknown origin, and the book just tells everyone to pray that they never run into a demon because that means instant game over. Ryu realizes that the world is too big and he needs to get stronger fast, so the next day, he ditches his clothes to go full Tarzan mode and ventures into the forest again. This time, an assassin hawk attacks him and he barely dodges its first attack. The huge bird then sends invisible wind slashes towards him, and Ryu realizes that this monster is way out of his league. He runs away, creating ice blocks behind his back to block the wind slashes, and then shoots water jets at the bird. The assassin hawk dodges everything and then charges towards Ryu at full speed, but he creates an ice wall at the last moment, blocking its attack. The bird loses one of its eyes because of the collision, and it decides to retreat this time, much to Ryu's relief. However, while he was running away from the hawk, Ryu lost his sense of direction. As he tries reaching his house, he suddenly finds a glowing lake with a headless knight standing on the water's surface along with a headless horse. Ryou is stunned to see this, and then the headless knight turns its attention towards him. Luckily, he returns home in one piece and continues exploring the forest after that, fighting stronger monsters and mastering his attack magic. At night, he goes to the lake again, where the headless knight is waiting for him. Ryou could not find anything about headless riders or Dullahans in the book, and he wonders if it is because they are high-level monsters or if they are not considered monsters at all. However, none of that matters because he is here to spar against it. Ryou attacks the headless knight with a sword made of ice, but he can't manage to land a single strike. He keeps taking hits instead, but blocks them all with an ice shield. He eventually gets exhausted and falls on the ground, but the headless knight doesn't attack him because it is actually training him. As he gets up, the headless knight comes towards him, holding a small crystal knife. The knight coats the knife in water and then freezes it, turning it into a sword of ice. It gives the sword to Ryou, who realizes that the headless knight is asking him to master this technique. Soon after that, Ryou runs into the assassin hawk he fought earlier, but this time, it has evolved into a stronger version of itself but also lost all its rights. The evolved hawk sends wind slashes at Ryou, who creates ice walls to block them instantly. He barely manages to avoid getting hit by the attacks that tear through his shields because they are much stronger than the last time. Ryou is forced to run away, and he can only block the hawk's attacks. The hawk suddenly speeds towards him, and Ryou somehow stops its attack by piling multiple ice shields in front of him. He tries to hit the hawk with icicles, but that doesn't work out either, and then the hawk uses a sonic attack to immediately cancel his ice shields. Ryou realizes that he is in trouble now, but then the hawk shocks him both figuratively and literally by attacking him with a thunderbolt. The monster swoops towards him to finish things, but Ryou manages to pull out his crystal sword and parry its attack. He can even slash away the invisible wind attacks sent by the bird, and when it swoops towards him again, he manages to stab it through the chest. The hawk falls to the ground and Ryou walks towards it, realizing that he just met the monster twice, but they developed a really strong bond. He thanks the hawk for motivating him to grow stronger and then pulls out the sword to let it bleed to death peacefully. Ryou then begins to head home, but then to his surprise, a dragon comes there. He figures that it is going to be his last day in this world, but surprisingly, the dragon starts talking to him through telepathy. The dragon asks him if he saw a black hawk and Ryou panics, thinking that he might have killed the dragon's minion. Luckily, the dragon seems pretty chill about it and even compliments Ryou on his achievement. He then points that the weapon he is carrying is quite rare, because it is the sword of the Fairy King. Ryou can't believe that, and he decides to learn more about the world from the friendly dragon who introduces himself as Lewin. They talk all day, but in the evening, the dragon gets called home, and he tells Ryou that they might meet again someday. On the other hand, the angel suddenly finds that he missed some details in Ryou's status. Turns out, Ryou is the second person in 10,000 years of the angel's career to have a hidden trait, and his hidden trait is called Eternal Youth. A few weeks later, Ryou starts craving seafood, so he visits the beach, but he is shocked to find a shipwreck there. He quickly finds a man near the ship, and on checking him closely, Ryou finds that he is not alive anymore. Suddenly, he hears a man groaning and his eyes brighten, because this is the first human he has met since coming to this world. The man named Abel has flashbacks of a giant octopus monster attacking his ship during a storm, which caused him to fall into the ocean, but when he opens his eyes, he finds himself in Ryou's house. He realizes that he made it out safely somehow, and immediately starts searching for others. As he leaves the house, he becomes even more confused because he has no idea where this place is, and just then, Ryou approaches him from behind. Abel is shocked because despite being a fairly skilled warrior, he could not sense Ryou coming. He is also shocked by his dressing sense, but decides to be polite and not talk about it at first. Abel introduces himself to Ryou and thanks him for saving his life. Ryou replies that he could only save him, and everyone else was already dead when he found them. Abel tells him not to worry about those guys because they were smugglers, but before he can elaborate, his stomach starts growling. Ryou tells him that they can talk over a meal and leads him inside, where Abel the nosy quickly brings up the topic of his clothes. Ryou tells him that he has no other clothes and no fabric to create new ones, and Abel tells him to just buy some. He immediately stops, thinking that Ryou must be too poor to afford buying clothes, but Ryou lessens his guilt by telling him that there are no people who live in this area besides him. Abel then asks Ryou if he hunts for food, and he affirms. Next, he asks if he uses the knife for that, but Ryou shows off his water magic, saying that he does most of his hunting using magic. Abel is impressed because only half the people in the world can use magic, and he is among the other half that can't. That is surprising news to Ryou because the angel told him that only 20% of people can use magic. Anyway, Abel asks him to take him to the shore because he needs to confirm something. On the way, he tells Ryou to let him take the front lines if they run into any sort of danger. Ryou replies that it is not necessary, but Abel insists because he doesn't want to be the one being saved all the time. Ryou lets him do as he pleases, and they soon reach the broken ship where all the bodies have vanished. Abel thinks that either the monsters or the sea took them, and he thanks Ryou for rescuing him because otherwise he would have faced the same situation. Abel then says that he couldn't find what he was looking for, and for now, he wants to meet up with his friends. But the storm sent the ship far south, and he has no idea which direction should he follow now. He suddenly gets an idea and asks Ryou if he would like to come with him. Ryou is shocked to hear this, and Abel says that he could use his help to find his way back, and then he could find him a job that will allow him to live in better conditions. Ryou thinks about his offer for a while, and in the end, he decides to become Abel's guide back to the city. That evening, he looks at his garden that he has cultivated with a lot of effort, and he gets a bit sad thinking about leaving it all behind. At night, he tells Abel that he is going out to say goodbye to someone, and even though the knight is curious about the person, he decides not to pry into the matter. Meanwhile, Ryou heads to the lake to see the headless knight, and inform him that he will be leaving the forest for a long time. He thanks the knight for teaching him how to fight, and then takes out his knife, saying that he will fight extra hard tonight. The headless knight also draws his sword, and then Ryou charges towards him, pushing him back with his relentless strikes. After a long and hard fight, Ryou gets exhausted, and the knight returns to the lake. Ryou thanks him one more time, and the knight remains silent. However, as soon as he reaches his position, he turns around and summons a magic suit from inside the water as a farewell gift. Ryou gets sentimental on receiving the suit, and he once again thanks the headless knight before returning home. The next morning, Ryou and Abel get ready to depart on their journey, and Ryou starts feeling nostalgic about leaving the place he has spent so much time in. Soon, they run into a wild boar in the forest, and Abel asks him to let him handle it. He dashes towards the boar with his sword drawn, and then uses a combat skill to turn the poor animal into a donut. Ryou is amazed and asks what are combat skills, and Abel explains that people who fight with weapons use combat skills. They camp in a hollow tree at night, and the next day, they resume their journey through the forest. They come across some lizardmen in a swamp, and Abel decides to change the route instead of crossing paths with them because they are quite strong. However, Ryou can sense that the lizardmen are following them even after they change their path, and Abel gets ready to fight them. Ryou tells him that there are too many of them, and he will use his magic to fight too. Abel thinks that Ryou won't be able to fight without his staff, but he is shocked when Ryou blitzes 4 lizardmen with his icicle lances. After the fight ends, Abel asks Ryou about the spell he just used. He replies that it is just the regular icicle lance, but Abel tells him that his wind mage friends can only cast 1 attack at a time when they use magic, but he summoned 4 icicle lances at once. Ryou tells him that it must be a problem of the wind magic because this is pretty normal for water magic. Abel decides not to think about it that much and says they should continue their journey, but before that Ryou creates 2 glasses using ice and summons water in them. Abel notices that he used a different incantation this time, and Ryou covers it up by saying that he must have heard it wrong the last time. After that, Abel gives Ryou a coin, and he excitedly says that this is the first time he is seeing money. Abel is dumbfounded because he always thought that Ryou was poor, but he never imagined him to be this poor. He then starts telling Ryou that there are 3 major countries in the Central Plains that include the Kingdom of Knightly, the Debuhi Empire, and the Handelu Federation. Ryou starts throwing shade on the Debuhi Empire because he doesn't like the name, and while he keeps talking shit about the stupid name, they reach a vast clearing. Suddenly, they notice a rock near them move on its own, and Abel quickly slashes it in half. Ryou also puts up a water shield to block the stones speeding towards them, and Abel realizes that they just walked into a nest of rock golems. Ryou asks if golems are not more humanoid in shape, but Abel decides to deal with them before answering the question. He dashes towards the nearest golem and blows a hole through it, but the golem quickly patches the wound and starts attacking him. Abel retreats, saying that their attacks won't be effective on the golems, but then Ryou gets an idea. He creates a huge ice cube in the air and drops it on top of the golems, squishing them. Abel is aghast because he has never seen a spell like that before, but Ryou uses it a few more times to defeat the rest of the golems. After that, they find a special rock golem with a big magic stone, and Abel says that it will sell for a lot. Ryou says that he would like to get the magic stone out of other golems as well, but they are buried under ice, and he is either too lazy or too dumb to just melt all of it. They continue their journey with that and soon come across a gigantic croc-hippo hybrid. Abel says that it is a behemoth, which is a very rare and powerful monster he has never seen before. Ryou asks if they should hunt it, but Abel tells him that it is not even possible. Just then, some wyverns also come there and Ryou gets excited because now they will see a battle between monsters. Soon, the wyverns begin shooting rocks at the behemoth with magic, but it just roars, cancelling out their magic and causing them to fall to the ground. Ryou tells Abel that the giant monster probably used magic cancellation skill. Later, as they are having dinner, Abel asks Ryou more about the magic cancellation skill because he has only heard about certain traps in dungeons that can do that. Ryou gets excited on hearing about dungeons, and Abel tells him that there is a dungeon in the city of Lune where they are headed. Ryou gets mad that he didn't tell him about this important thing earlier, and asks him if he is hiding something else too. Abel asks him if he at least knows about dwarves and elves, but Ryou asks him to give him the details. A few days later, they reach a mountain range and Ryou says that they will find some human settlement after crossing the mountains. Abel asks him how can he be so sure, and Ryou wonders if he should tell him that he met a dragon who told him a lot about this world. He decides to keep it a secret in the end, saying that it is knowledge beyond human comprehension. Soon after that, they hear a strange sound and both of them get ready to fight. However, when a powerful monster called Griffin approaches them from the sky, both Ryou and Abel freak out. Abel starts having a panic attack, but Ryou quickly solves the situation by throwing a chunk of meat up in the air. Abel apes his act, and the griffin collects both pieces in its mouth before flying away. The boys heave a sigh of relief after it is gone, and they agree that they wouldn't have lasted long if they picked a fight with something so strong. As they continue their journey, Abel says that no human has encountered behemoths or griffins in the past 100 years, and the tall mountains must be stopping them from reaching human settlements. That reminds Ryou that the wyverns who fought the behemoth came from the north, which means their nest is nearby. He turns out to be right as they soon find some wyverns feeding on a monster. Ryou wants to fight, but Abel says it takes at least 20 experienced adventurers to face off against monsters as strong as wyverns. Ryou tells him that they won't be able to avoid fighting in the future, and asks if it will be better if the wyverns are pinned to the ground. Abel affirms, saying that he can beat one in close combat, and Ryou immediately steps out, chanting a long fake spell just to summon 4 icicles to stab the wings of the wyverns. Abel uses this chance to blow their brains out, but then 2 more wyverns arrive there. Ryou pins them down using icicles, but without chanting a spell this time, and Abel gets suspicious. Anyway, they defeat the wyverns and collect their magic stones, and then continue their journey to the north. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.